Hey everyone, welcome Flavor family. Today I am going to be talking about stretch meals. So, what exactly are stretch meals? Well, when you have that meat that was left over from the barbecue, or maybe another option that you have that was left over, I'm going to be talking about how to stretch that into another meal. But today, the meal that we're going to start off with as a foundation are some butter beans and smoked neck bones. Ooh, yes, smoked neck bones. And let me tell you, y'all, I smoked them yesterday and they smell and look so good. So I am excited about this. But from that one meal, we're going to make two other options that you can go with. All right, so stay tuned. I'm sure you're going to enjoy this. Let's get cooking. Okay, so guys, I have my ingredients laid out right here. I have 6 cups of chicken broth. This is a half a cup of white wine. Then I have my chopped onions here, and that's half a chopped onion. 2 bay leaves, 2 garlic mince, 2 garlic cloves. And then, of course, those lovely smoked neck bones that I talked about before. And also right here, I have celery salt, and we're just going to use a tiny bit of celery salt with this. Okay, so the first thing I've done was put in my onions, and I'm letting those cook down just until they're translucent. All right, so once they've sort of become translucent, then I'm going to add in my garlic. And I'm just let that cook for about 30 seconds there. All right, next comes my bay leaf. Go ahead and throw that in there. And then I'm going to add my half a cup of wine. Okay. And I am just going to let that wine cook down for just a little bit, cook some of that alcohol off until it's cooked down to about 1/4 of a cup of wine. Okay, so I have lifted my camera up a little bit higher, guys. Oh, camera. Can't talk today. So our wine has cooked down. I lifted it up so you can see a little bit better into the pot. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add just a pinch of celery salt. And that is all you need. You do not need a lot. And I am going to go ahead and place our neck bones in there. And you want to get them in there as flat as you can. There we go. And now I'm going to pour in the chicken stock. And this should be enough to cover my neck bones. And that's what I need. I need enough to cover and enough to still be there whenever I'm done cooking, so that I still have enough for the beans when the beans go in. All right, and I'm going to turn that up so I can bring that to a boil. And then we're going to let it simmer, covered about halfway. And then what we're trying to do, we're trying to get that to the point of where the meat is really, really tender, easy to slide your fork or your knife through and almost coming off the bone, because we are going to pull the meat off the bone. So we want it to be easy to do that. So it takes about, these are already smoked, so this might take about 1 hour to get it to that point. We're going to come back and check at about that 1 hour mark. If you're not doing it with smoked neck bones, then and you're only doing it from like, you just brown the neck bone, it's definitely going to take 2 to 2.5 hours for it to get to that point. But since we've already done some cooking in the smoker, it shouldn't take that long. All right, so we'll come back. Stop. Let's take a pause for a minute. We're going to break down the flavor layers in this first recipe. So the first thing we have is the Maillard reaction. And believe it or not, the browning of your meat produces actual flavor compounds that contributes to the overall taste of what you are cooking. Second, we have the smoke. So the smoke is from the wood that I smoked the meat with. So I use hickory, maple, and cherry. Now our hickory provided a savory punch to the meat. And then our maple and our cherry added an additional subtle sweetness, as well as our cherry producing that mahogany color that makes us all say, mmm. Of course, then we also have our aromatics like our garlic and our onion and bay leaf. Next, the collagen within the meat. What does the collagen do? Well, that actually breaks down within our broth and adds a rich flavor to our broth. And to cut through that richness, we're going to add a little bit of the white wine. So that white wine added brightness to our broth, as well as the chicken broth, which is also another savory element. All right, let's continue. Okay, guys, believe it or not, it has been about an hour and this meat is already really tender. You see that pull off right there? So we are ready to go ahead and add our beans. And I'm gonna grab those. And this is just a bag of frozen butter beans that I got from the store. And we're going to add these in. And we're going to continue to let everything cook for another 30-45 minutes. And there we go. Sort of break those down a little bit. And you notice when I did my onions and everything in the beginning, I did not add any salt. And that is because this neck bone is pork neck bone and they're already sort of salty. So I'm going to salt at the very end once I have everything cooked. And because I don't want it to be too salty. All right. So we're going to put the top back on. This will come back up. and it will continue to cook. Okay, so our beans are done. Yay! Now it's time to take our neck bones out and we're going to shred them, okay? So I'm just going to grab a few here. Let's see, we'll use this to grab it. Ooh, look how easy that meat comes off of there. Just slides right off. And you want to make sure any fat, because there is fat on these, that you put that to the side, because I'm sure nobody wants to eat any fat in their beans. And it should be quite easy to do that. Just get all that meat out of there. All right, let's go to this other one here. Ooh, look at that. Oh, and guys, this smells so good. It really does. That's a part of our bay leaf we'll take out anyways. And that just breaks down really easy. All right, I'm going to continue breaking down this meat. And once I'm done, I'll show you the whole thing. Okay, guys, so this is what it's looking like after I shredded the neck bones. So as you can see, it has plenty of meat in here. I also, as it cooked, added a little bit more of the broth, chicken broth. And it's really up to you how much liquid you want in your beans. If you don't want any liquid, you can let it cook almost all the way out. But I do like a little bit of liquid still left. And now I am going to add just a little bit of salt in here. Stir that around. And if you want to make it a little thicker, you can use the starch from your beans. Just sort of mash some of those beans as your liquid is cooking, and it will make your juice a little bit liquid. Or sorry, it'll make your juice a little bit thicker. The starch from the beans will. So let's give it a taste. We'll make sure I get some of that meat. That's good. It is smoky, creamy beans, creamy butter beans. Oh yeah, I like that. Layers of flavor in it. So there you have it. There is that first recipe, the butter beans with the smoked neck bones. Now I'm going to come back later and I'm going to show you another recipe that you can do with about 2 cups of that as leftovers. Now here I'm going to give you a little bit of a history lesson. The butter bean, where did it come from? Introducing the Spanish explorers. They are the ones that brought the butter beans here to the U.S., in particular in the South. So why are they called butter beans? Well, it's their creamy texture, their creaminess just like butter. That's where that name comes from. And that's what they're adding to our recipe, a creamy, buttery texture. And they're also soaking up all of that good, savory broth that we have. Hey everyone, you remember on last time we did the neck bone and butter beans? We did a whole pot of that. So it's the next day, have leftovers, and we're going to create something new with those leftovers. So today we're going to go ahead and do a neck bone stew with those leftovers. And we're going to take a little bit further and do a smoked neck bone cornbread cobbler. And you might be thinking, oh my goodness, what is that? Well, just wait and see. All right, so we'll get started with that. Okay, so for my ingredients for the stew, I just put this over the wet napkin so that doesn't start to oxidate, but these are my potatoes. So here I have about a medium-sized potato and a small potato. Okay. Here I have 1 carrot and 1 celery diced. You'll need 2 to 3 cups of your butter bean and neck bone mixture that you did the day before. And you're going to be adding more chicken broth to it. All right. So let's get started. Okay, guys, literally, you're just throwing everything in the pot. This is super, super easy. So I'm going to go ahead and put my beans in. Going to put in my carrot and my celery here. Then my potatoes. Oh, one escaped. And then I am going to add in enough chicken broth to sort of loosen up those beans and give me more of a texture of a stew. And of course, enough to cook these potatoes and other veggies that I got in here. There we go. All right, and then we're going to let it cook, simmer down for about 20 to 25 minutes. So let's break down the flavors that we're adding to our stew. So we've already got our smoky meat in there. We've got our butter beans in there from the last recipe that are creamy. And now we're adding in carrots. Our carrots are providing some sweetness to this recipe. We also have celery, which helps develop a sense of fresh. And then we also have potatoes. And potatoes go a long way in not only soaking up the broth that's already in the pot, but it also provides a sense of satisfaction and completion to this stew. Okay, so at this point, the stew has been cooking for about almost 20 minutes, but my potatoes are already soft. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn off my timer. And you can also, if you're gonna end it here and just make your stew, you can also throw in some fresh parsley to also give more flavor to your stew. But one other thing, all depending on how thick you really want it. You can take some beans, and just like I said before, let me see if I could just grab some beans here. Here we go. But you can take those beans out and you can mash them. To thicken up your stew, all depending on how thick you really want it. So I'm just going to mash these because that starch from your beans is going to help thicken your stew. Now, I'm not going to end it here. I'm going to let this cook down some more, thicken up a little bit, because I am going to make that cornbread cobbler. I'm going to just take a few more beans out here. I'm not trying to mash them all, just a little bit. All right. And that will start to thicken. And I'm doing that because I want this to thicken enough where I can do something like a pot pie. So I need this to be just a little bit thicker than what it currently is. So while that continues to simmer, I'm going to work on my cornbread topping. So, okay, here is my start for my cornbread. I already have my cornmeal and my flour in here. So 1 cup of yellow cornmeal flour, a 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour. And to that, I am going to add a teaspoon of baking powder. And this is a 1/2 teaspoon that I'm using. And I'm going to do a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Okay, I'll just stir that up a bit. And I don't want my cornbread to be super thick for this topping, because that's not what I want. I want just a thin layer of cornbread over the top. All right, now for our liquid items, 3/4 cup of buttermilk. Okay, there we go. To that, I'm gonna add my butter. And that is 2 tablespoons of butter. I do want a little bit of sweetness, so I'm going to put in about 1 tablespoon of honey. Get as much as that out of there as I can. All right. And then I'm going to add just 1 egg. Alrighty. And that stew is starting to thicken up just the way I want it to. Alright, get rid of that here. Go ahead, mix all that up. And pour it in. Make sure you get that honey, because you don't want to leave that in there in your cup. Okay, actually I'm just gonna loosen that up just a little bit more, so I'm gonna add just a little bit more buttermilk to it, just a little bit. And what I'm going to do is, once I get ready to assemble this, I am going to just plop little spoonfuls of this. I don't want it super runny and I don't want it super thick. That looks about right. All right, so that is ready. So now what I am going to do is I'm going to check again on our stew here, see if it's where I need it to be. And then we're going to start assembling that cobbler. Now, one thing you can also do is, if it's not thickening how you would like it, just with your beans, you can put in some cornstarch or some arrowroot if you have it. All you're going to do is take some of your liquid, put in either your cornstarch or arrowroot. I would not put in a whole lot. Right now, I'm just doing a teaspoon of it in here, and I'm just going to stir that up so I don't have any lumps. Okay, and I'm going to pour that in right back into my soup or my stew. Let it cook, see how well it begins to thicken. If you need to do it again a second time, then you can do that. All right. All right, so here for the moment of truth, I am ready to start building that neckbone cornbread cobbler, right? So I want you to take a look how thick that is. You see some of it still coating my spoon? That's how thick you want your broth to be. If you want, you could do it a little bit thicker. I would not go too much thicker than this, but it is coating my spoon. Alrighty, so what I am going to do is I am going to spoon some of this into my pan. I'm going to do this in a cast iron pan, our cast iron skillet. Let's see. Sorry for the noise. I had to get my spoon. So I did heat my skillet up just a bit. And I am going to pour this. You hear it's hot. So you don't want it to be super hot. I had to put mine in the oven for just a bit. Just a little bit. But I'm just going to. Ooh. I tend to forget how hot this gets. There we go. My oven is on 400. And I'm just going to even this out. Now we're really just cooking, not so much to cook the stew, but we are cooking just to cook that cornbread on the top of this. Let's move some potatoes over here, so everybody gets some of the potatoes. They're not all lumped in one little section. There we go. All right, everything is smooth. You know what? We're going to use this. There we go. All right. Now for our cornbread topping. We're just going to do this here all over. It does not have to go all the way to the end. In fact, I would say don't put it all the way to the end, just so that some steam can get out. Let's see, I'm going to try to spread this out just a little bit here. All right. And guys, we're just going to bake this long enough for that topping to turn a golden brown. All right. And I would say you don't want this cornbread to be more than 1/2 inch thick. I'm going to try to give you guys a better view. Because remember, we're not trying to get it super thick. But in the oven it goes. For this last recipe, it's much more of a textural experience than adding so much flavor. We are adding flavor with our layer of cornbread because that cornbread has a slight sweetness to it. And if you're adding in peas, that also adds a little bit of sweetness. And our parsley, if you're going to add it in at the end like I did, well, that gives you a little bit of a herbal note. But more so, you have your cornbread that is contrasting with your savory broth because that cornbread is fluffy and a little bit crunchy. And so it provides that contrast that you need to give you a different experience. All right, guys, so I have just taken this out of the oven and it looks yummy. My kids are gonna love this. I also brushed the top of my cornbread with a little bit of melted butter, and I'm gonna hold it up because maybe you can see those edges that lifted up, but you also have all the sauce that went into that edge of the cornbread and underneath the cornbread. And here I'm just gonna go ahead, and you can do this before it's parsley. You can add this in right before you get ready to top it with the cornbread, but I didn't do that. So I'm just going to put a little bit of parsley around here now. So you get a little bit of it when you dig in. And there we have it. Now I'll just hold it up again so you can see it. All right, guys, so that's it. Easy peasy. From one foundational recipe, you get the option of doing 2 other recipes. So, Flayvor family, to sum all of this up, you have multiple layers that are added to each recipe. You have that first foundational recipe. And really, if you want to go all the way back to the beginning, you could just leave it at the pot of neck bones, and we can start there as the foundational recipe. But each time we're adding layers, and we're adding more layers to create a flavor experience and a texture experience. And each one is different. And I will tell you that not all of this tastes the same. So my butter beans and my neck bones taste different from my stew, and my stew tastes different from my cornbread cobbler because they all provide different layers of flavor and texture. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this and maybe learned a little bit of something. Who knows? You might have known all this already. But anyway, if you like it, let me know. And I would love to provide more recipes that can help you sort of stretch those meals and you not have to worry about what you're going to eat during the week. Because as you saw, each layer that I added only really took a few more minutes in the kitchen. And that having that base recipe really helps. So maybe think about, not so much what new recipe am I going to do in the kitchen for dinner tomorrow, but maybe what other flavor layers can I add on to something that I already have to create a totally new experience? All right, guys, I'll be talking to you later.